Hey everybody, Questwise here, and we are back again today to talk about Rifts. I've decided, well, let me start with this. Rifts is one of my favorite games of all times, and it partially according to two different things here. So one of them being that it's Millennium Books was the first game, role playing game that I ever played. Heroes Unlimited, TMNT, and Other Strangeness, Palladium Fantasy, and Rifts. So Rifts has always been one of my favorite games, and it's because there's everything in it. Rifts has everything that you could ever want from a post-apocalyptic world: technology, magic, intrigue, drama. It's all in there. It doesn't matter what style of play or what type of game you like. You'll find it in Rifts, and so that's a couple of reasons why I think Rifts is one of my favorite role playing games, and I go back to it constantly. And I wish I could play it more. Hopefully, when all this stuff in the world is over with, we can get some more groups going and stuff. While playing online is an option, I really much rather prefer playing at a table with friends and stuff. So. But I thought I want to go back and focus on this a little bit today. And as I was flipping through my collection and stuff, I came up with this idea of something that I want to do, sort of a video series that'll be kind of long and drawn out. It'll be kind of over a great period of time. But what I want to do is I want to focus on hitting on major parts of the world books, and I won't cover the entire breadth of each book. But hit the pieces that I really think are important, and pieces that I think are my favorite parts of the different world books. And we'll talk about specific events in history of the Rifts world and the Rifts universe, the Megaverse. And we'll go through quite a few of these. But today I thought we would step outside of the core rulebook of Rifts and go, while the core rulebook does give you a lot of information about what's going on in the world, the world books really step outside of the North American continent and away from the coalition and starts to explore other parts of the world. And I thought I would start with one of the very first ones. We had already done a video on Atlantis and then some of the supplements for that as well too. So I thought I'd skip to England, and I think I've talked about England a little bit before, but I wanted to go kind of more in depth. And so actually, having looked at the England book, my copy is pretty well worn. It's seen a lot of love. It's actually going to be probably a two-part series. I don't want to keep these super long. I don't want to bore you with half hour worth of information. So what I thought I would do is it's amazing to me that in 150 pages, this book has so much stuff packed into it. One of the things I really enjoy about the world books is it's expanding upon the theme. It's expanding upon the idea of this post-apocalyptic Earth and Megaverse and all these things that are going on. And the people that had written for and are still writing for playing books are top notch, man. They're amazing people, amazing artists, and you get a really cool, vivid world out there. There's some really insane concepts that sometimes come together with these creators and stuff. So I thought I'd start with England, but there's so much stuff packed into this book that it's actually going to be a two-part series, I believe, a two-part video on England itself. So the next one will come out next week, and we'll cover the rest of this book. But man, as I was trying to think about where to begin, I thought maybe I'd just go, like logically through the book, and that's kind of what I did. So England, after the coming of the Rifts, if you know Rifts, you're probably pretty familiar with the idea of the ley lines, magic being reborn, and these ley lines, ancient avenues of power cutting across the planet and connecting at certain places of power. So the first thing that probably springs to your mind when it comes to England is Stonehenge, and while that's in here, there's some really cool other concepts that pop up that have been created as well too. And one of those things are in the Millennium trees, and I was really fascinated by these when I first encountered this book, because where I grew up, I lived 17 miles from the nearest town as a kid. So a lot of my time was spent outside in the forests, around lakes and places, and ponds and all sorts of stuff. So there were trees, and nothing like the Millennium trees at all in Rifts, but there were certain trees in the forest that you could tell were sort of they were there. They had been there. They had weathered time. They had seen some stuff because they were massive, massive trees, and you get this feeling of sort of being around these trees, of the sort of sense of power and agelessness and strength that these trees kind of exude. So when I saw the aspect of Millennium trees, the trees of life in Rifts or England, I was really fascinated by these ideas. These are massive trees. They're thousands of feet tall. And they dwarf over the landscape. There's, possibly, it doesn't say, I think exactly, but maybe a dozen of them scattered across England and Scotland and Wales and Ireland. These are megadamic structures. They arose there, after the rifts. These magical trees that have a sense of life to them, an intelligence to them. While they don't speak, to people, they don't communicate in any sort of way, other than that they provide a sense of comfort. They provide a sense of them, and they're massive in that they have like structures within them. People live in them. They're Millennium Druids that tend to care for these things. And there are times, there's a story in here. We get to re-meet Erin Tarn, who's the kind of chronicler of Rifts universe. In this book, she talks about how she escaped Wormwood and arrived here in England, and that when she was at the Millennium Tree, she was actually granted a gift by one of the trees. It was a wand. And so that's another way that it can kind of communicate. If it deems somebody worthy, it will give them a gift, whether it be a leaf from the tree, whether it be a branch that becomes a wand or a staff. And those are all fully detailed in the book, and some really, really cool magic items in there as well too. But these are life forms, right? And they're there. They've sort of reemerged because of magic, and they're there to sort of protect the earth. And they can do so very violently if they're ever attacked, or they're deemed that the people that are living amongst them are in danger. They can create magical effects to ward off, whether it be sort of an energy field or it be this magic ley line storm, to wave off any sort of danger that's being inflicted upon them. They are the defense of all good folk, and you'll find a lot of great or good creatures living in and amongst these trees and in communities surrounding them and stuff as well too. They have supernatural life cycles. It's really not known how long they will exist, but they are massive, massive. I want to call them beings because they're trees, but they are intelligent. They do have a life form, and very, very cool concept. A very, very fun idea of that sort of a place of refuge. If your characters are playing in England and find themselves pretty tattered and beat up from an encounter, it's kind of neat to be able to sort of introduce them and see a Millennium Tree in the distance and go and find solace there and stuff as well too. So the Millennium Tree is a really cool concept. Some really great artwork as well too, sort of depicting these trees and what they look like and how they sort of gives you a good way to sort of describe them to your players and stuff as well too. Because of this stuff, because of we're in England and we're talking about sort of Druidic magic and stuff, we get introduced to a bunch of new magic. Herbalism magic is fully detailed into this book. We get the herbalists, we get druids, we get herbal magic. There's a lot of cool new OCCs, occupational character classes and stuff in here. The Philid, which is a herbalist and a bard. It's kind of a Irish, I believe, maybe Scottish descent kind of idea there. The Dryad, which is a master of herbal magic and mixing different herbs together to produce different effects. The Scathacht, which is a cauldron druid, which I found really, really fascinating. Kind of bleeds back to that idea of the Lloyd Alexander Chronicles of Prydain. in which those are all drawn from Welsh mythology, and then the Cauldron Born and stuff, and that's just a cool addition to this as well too. And one of the other ones that's highlighted in here too is the Millennium Druids, and I mentioned them earlier. They are sort of the caretakers of the Millennium trees, and it's their duty to protect the land surrounding these trees and to shepherd them and do the whims of that, that being, that entity. And the last thing I want to kind of focus on today is the Chiang-Ku dragons. Now, these are dragons that sort of, there's always that theory on Earth that aliens had arrived and taught us things like how to build and gave us engineering skills and how to write and how to, learn the mathematics and that kind of stuff. What we learn in Rifts, England, is that it's the Chiang-Ku dragons that actually did that in our way distant past, that they taught us things like they were guides to our human civilization. And when magic began to die, they left and began to scatter throughout the megaverse and do their own thing. But they were also the progenitors of tattoo magic. And we see that a lot scattered out throughout Rifts, especially in the Atlantis. True Atlanteans covering themselves in tattoos and using them. These were all taught by the Chiang-Ku dragons. These are ancient beings. And you can actually play one in here. They give you the rules as a racial character class. But they're very, very rare. And they're very, very powerful. And there's believed that there's maybe 100 left in the entire megaverse. After being hunted down in wars between themselves and a bunch of other stuff. And there's a cool section in here where it talks about the ones that are left. A lot of them came back to Earth after the Rifts. Magic was reborn, and they come back here to sort of re-help humanity, kind of find its place again in such a chaotic world. But it's interesting because the way that this is written as well too, that it gives them this weird twist, as if are they really shepherding humanity towards greatness, or are they really shepherding humanity towards what the Chiang-Ku dragons want, what's in their best interest? So it's an interesting twist that it's possible that they are heroes of humanity, but they're also maybe the greatest villains as well too. So it gives you a lot of great ideas for depth of role playing and stuff, and I really want to use that. It's kind of an intrigue sort of campaign, or at least a setup for a campaign, or for some adventures even in Rifts, England, for the Chiang-Ku dragons, and whether or not they're the heroes after all. But there's a lot of great stuff, and that was really only about half the book, maybe not even a half of the book. But coming back next week, we'll have part 2 of this. We'll go into things like King Arthur and Merlin and some of the other power players that are happening in England, and some of the other stuff that you'll be able to find while campaigning in England during the Rifts apocalypse. Until next time, I'm Questwise. My friends, game on and stay safe.